Hi, my name's Rob Kennedy, and in this video I'm going to explore what I've previously referred to as hypersharp. I'm going to segment the whole video into chapters so that you can skip the parts that don't interest you at the time. What I'll cover are the pros and cons of going beyond what many people would consider to be absolutely pointless. I'm also going to throw in a bit of theory. I don't apologise for that. I consider it worth talking about. Others may not. I'll show you how I get to that next level of sharpness in the video, and I'll outline the techniques and stones that I use, and in particular, what may be a bit of interest to you is why I would choose, say, one stone over another. To begin with, you may ask why you'd want to go to such extreme sharpness. From my own perspective, I actually got hooked about 5 years ago when I was sharpening some knives in my kitchen. And I was wondering, what was the gold standard? What was an acceptable standard? What were other knife sharpeners and chefs doing? And it wasn't long before I became so obsessed with it that, all my knives had to be sharper than everyone else's. It's certainly a problem for me, and that's mainly because I lack any form of self-control. The practical theory behind sharp knives is that if you use a hyper-sharp knife, then you will cause less cellular damage, and therefore the moisture and flavour loss is reduced. Possibly the best example that you can test yourself is to cut chilies on a white cutting board and use a blunt knife, and then use a sharp knife, and you'll see that a blunt knife crushes the cells, whereas a sharp knife slices through them. Having said that, I probably don't have a sufficiently educated palate to even tell the difference. I guess the negative aspects of having hyper sharp knives is that it's just so easy to make things harder for yourself. For example, once I sharpened a Yanaga bar, and I ground down the primary bevel over about 3 days. And I got the edge so sharp, I reckon I could have easily given a blowfly vasectomy. The only problem with such sharpness is that if you make any mistake on the cutting board, you run into a little bone, or you chop just a little bit too hard, and you can chip the blade, or you can roll the edge. And I nearly wrecked that knife. It was a hard-learned lesson. And now I still have a Yanaga bar that's sharp, but I only ever use it for boneless fish, and that's it. I also have a Nakiri, which is a naturally thicker blade, but it's, I've taken the micro bevel off, which you do in this sharpening technique, and but it still won't tolerate any sort of cavalier chopping on the board. I do have one suggestion, that if you're going to go down the hyper sharp road, that you start off with a cheaper knife. For this video, I'm using this one. It's a Nakiri Sanmai construction, which means that there's a hard carbon steel core. It has stainless steel sides. It cost me about $40, and it's a good way to start. You don't want to wreck one of your good knives like I nearly did. The one last thing, also I'm filming this after I filmed the video, and I made a comment when I was doing the final honing on a Shapton 330,000 grit whetstone. I really doubt, if you don't have one, I really doubt if it's worth the game. The increment in sharpness is dubious, and at $500, it's I wouldn't recommend you spend that just for shits and giggles. Okay, the lectures are over, and I'll take this blade upstairs and we'll get it sharpened. Okay, so for today's video, I'm going to be using this Nakiri. It's Sanmai, which means it's clad in stainless steel and has a hard carbon steel centre. It's second hand. It cost me around about $40. And it's a good starting point for this kind of exercise. I will be doing most of my talking over the stones, because I really have done this on the budget. I've got one light, one tripod and one camera. So I'll be doing the talking over the top of my sharpening. Okay, it might seem an odd place to start, but this is a 400 grit Nakiri Pro Stone, and what I'm going to do is just run the stone with a knife along the stone along this bevel. It's very, very gentle primary bevel from the flat. And the reason I'm doing that is I just want to see, basically I'm scoping out the blade to see how straight it is, or flat. I'm only going to do 10 strokes on each side just to get an idea. And that'll help me work out whether I want to start on a Shapton 110 grit stone or a Shapton 220 grit stone. Okay, there's not much wear on this side, it's all down here. There's a little bit there. This side is a lot more worn. I did take a few more strokes. So what I'm going to do is I think I'm going to start on the Shapton 220 and see where that takes us. Okay, so here we've got the 220. To my left you can see there's a Devato 220 grit. It's a Suhiro. It's a little harder than the Shapton. The Shapton gives a lot of mud straight away. Now I'm keeping my fingers down as close to the edge as I can. I'm just going to do a few strokes, not that many in each part of the blade. I don't want to lose the primary bevel. Sorry, I do want to lose my primary bevel, but I don't want to lose the edge. Now the reason I've got the 200 and the Suhiro as well is that it's a harder stone, and I'll probably move to that once I come off the Shapton. Now this side's looking okay. This side, the right hand side, needs a lot more work. Now as you can see, the primary bevel is now about the same on both sides. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to switch to the Suhiro because it's harder. As you can see, the Shapton is quite muddy, and there's nothing wrong with that at all. But the Suhiro is a little bit harder, and so will wear less as I grind that primary bevel down. I'm going to grind it until I get a burr coming on one of the sides, and then I'll start. I'll go back to the 400. Okay, so I have probably done about 300 strokes on each side, and we're getting there. As you can see, there's no micro bevel on this side. If you look over this side, you can just make a pale blue line on the top of the edge, and that is reflection from the micro bevel. So I'm just going to work this side. Probably another 100 strokes will get that off, and then we'll move on to the next stone. It doesn't happen straight away, but once you get rid of that bevel, all of a sudden you'll feel how the edge becomes a little bit more grippy, and that shows it's sharpened. You can see that the bevel now, it goes right to the apex, and you can see that the lamination line is fairly even on both sides, and that's something to be careful of, because if you can't sharpen one of these, a Nakiri like you can a Deba, for example, because as you move over, you're moving off the carbon steel into stainless steel, and you don't want that. You want that carbon steel core right down the middle. Now that I've got that where I want to, the hard work is done. It actually took close to an hour and a half, 2 hours on a 220 grit stone. But now I'm going to move to a 400 grit, the Nano 400 Pro, and this is where refinement starts. All those scratch marks, you want to start to eliminate them, because with something that you want that is so sharp, those little scratches actually form teeth on the edge and could potentially, for example, stop you slicing freestanding cigarette paper. So you want those all off. So we're going to go to 400 now, and when I got most of those scratches, well, all of those 220 grit stone scratches off, I'm going to be moving to a 1000 grit stone. Incidentally, one of the most frequently asked questions I get is how many strokes on each side. I lost count with this, but I'm guessing that there was at least 500. And it shows, you can see on my fingers how I've worn through my fingers by keeping my fingers so close to the edge to facilitate that. You really can't just count the number of strokes that you do. You've got to do, say, 50 and then check to make sure that your lamination line is not disappearing over to one side or anything like that. So now when I start on the 400 grit stone, hopefully all those scratch marks will be gone. As you can see, the primary bevel is now flat and it has a consistent look about it. And I'll bet that at this point is actually quite very, very sharp and would perform quite well. But now, for now, we'll go to the 1000 Morahai and see how that cleans that up. Okay, so that was 300 strokes on each side of the blade. You'll notice how that the primary bevel, despite the fact that it's gone grey, is quite reflective, and that's just the polish developing. You'll notice that after the 3000 grit, everything starts to happen after 1000 or 2000 grit. Now I've got a choice. I've got a Morahai 3000 grit and a Nano 3000 grit. Now I'm going to use both because, in my opinion, the Morahai 3000 grit is closer to about a 2700, if that makes any sense, and the Nano Pro stone is softer. It's also it is a true 3000 grit stone. So I'm just going to put probably 50 strokes on the Morahai Pro stone, the Morahai 3000, because it'll help get some of this grey off, which is it's a Kasumi finish. And you can see the difference between the hard carbon steel core and the stainless steel. Now, as we go up in grades, that will actually become a mirror polish. And I'll come back to you after I've done the 3000 grit stones. Okay, so that's after about, 100 each side on the, 50 each side on the Morahai 3000 and 150 each side on the Nano. You can see the debris coming off on the Nano. It's a sticky stone, and you'll be tempted to just lift the blade up, which will cause you to create a micro bevel, which is what you don't you do not want to happen. So guard against that. And you've got a choice now. I wash the nanoa after every 50 strokes because I don't want the Kasumi finish. The more of this grey material you leave on there, the deeper the Kasumi finish will be. And that will progress up through as we go through the next stone, which will be a 6,000 and then an 8,000 and so forth. The more you leave on, the darker the Kasumi finish will get. I'll be washing the stone after every, probably at some point, maybe even 20 strokes, because when I'm finished with this knife, I'm giving it to an aspiring young chef. So I know that she has a preference to highly polished finishes, so that's probably why I'll be going down that road. Now I'll switch to the 6,000 Mora High and come back to you after I've done that. Okay, as you can see, there's a lot of mud or debris on the blade that was on the stone, and so that's why I tend to wash the stone every 50 strokes, because if you don't, you'll just you won't get rid of the Kasumi appearance, and in this case, I don't want that. So I'll wash that off and show you the result. Okay, so as you can see, it's the actual carbon steel is starting to get very polished, where the stainless steel is probably enjoying the process just a little less. And it's still looking quite grey, although as it's, you can see reflections in it, so it's coming along. So now what we'll do is we'll move to the Emanishi 8,000 grit stone. Okay, so you can see the reflections in the cloud outside the window there now. If I was actually after a Kasumi finish, I'd be pretty happy with that. And you can see how the carbon steel is also getting just a little bit more polished. So now we have a choice. We can go to a 12,000 grit stone. Now I have a Mora High 12,000 grit stone. I've got a Nanoa 12,000 grit stone. I think it's called a Snowflake. And I've got a Shapton 12,000 grit stone. Now, because this process requires so much water to keep grit off and any little particles of metal that could re-scratch that surface, I don't want to use the Shapton in this case. The Mora High is probably a little more aggressive than I want at this stage, so I'm going to go to the Nanoa 12,000 grit Snowflake, and that'll be the last stone that I put it on, apart from a stropping stone, which is something I've been avoided. I don't strop on the stone when I'm not trying to get a bevel. Don't strop on the stone. So I haven't been stropping on the stone at this point, and I'll be doing that on a Shapton 30,000 grit stone, just to put the final finish on the edge. So I'll come back after I've done the Nanoa 12,000. And there you can see how the 12,000 nano has really knocked the colour out of that bevel. It still looks pretty cool actually. It's got a little bit of dark patch that would come out with some hand polishing. So what I'm going to do now, sorry, that was 300 strokes on each side on the nanoer 12,000 grit, is I'm going to strop on the stone just to even out the edge on the blade, give it a fraction more strength, and it shouldn't affect its sharpness at all. And so I'll probably do 50 strokes on each side on the 30,000 grit nanoer. It's very hard. It's hard as rock and it's unforgiving. And I'll come back to you after that. Just going to lift that spine up just a fraction. This is a very slow process because you don't want to ruin all the work you've done. You're not putting much weight on that blade at all, just guiding it. The reason I'm doing 50 is, as I said, this stone is rock hard. It's very unforgiving, and a mistake at this point would be beyond frustration instead of beyond razor hyper sharp. Okay, so there you have it. We've taken a $40 second-hand knife and put it through the test. We've put it gone from 400 down to a 220 Shapton and all the way back up through to a 12,000 grit nanoer snowflake to polish, and then we've given it the edge, just a little bit of a strop on the stone with a 12,000 grit, 30,000 grit Shapton stone, which you saw. Now I'm just going to give it a quick clean up, and 24 strops, 12 on each side. Now I do like the paper test. It gives you an idea of how noisy the knife is, and that was not noisy in my opinion. It gives an extremely sharp cut. It's quiet, it's sharp, and I'll just set up some tests to see how it goes in reality. Back soon.